Hi everybody, karibuni sana to today's live question and answer session, aka the Q&A. I'm very excited to have you all here, and as I wait for more people to join, I'm going to start with a bit of an introduction. There's some people who apparently don't know me. I'm very surprised, but I'm Jennifer. I'm a counseling psychologist. I am an author. I am in private practice, doing therapy one-on-one with clients. What else am I? I do this thing. I host the podcast here, which is Conversations with the Therapist. I host another show on another platform, which is Know the Therapist, on Infinity Wellness Consultants Instagram page. So I do that every Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the guest and the availability. So I do that every Wednesday or Thursday for Know the Therapist. If you're looking for information about therapists, where to find them, what kind of work they do, if that is something you're curious about, that is a page you should check out as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm here doing this Q&A today because it has been highly requested by many people, and I realized not everybody has the opportunity to go to therapy, as you all know. And so if we can solve all the problems, not necessarily all the problems, but if we can solve as many problems as possible out here with our regular conversations, then this is something worthwhile for me. So I'm very excited to have you here and to have this conversation with you. As I said, I'm Jennifer, in case you missed that part. I'm Jennifer Kyalo. I'm a counseling psychologist. I think we should start with a few ground rules, which are that, first of all, this is not therapy. Let me categorically say that this is not therapy. This is a therapist answering questions that you have. And so this should not be substituted for therapy. If you're in therapy, continue to go to therapy. If you're about to start therapy, do not say that now that I've started talking about these things, now you've stopped your journey. That should not, I should not be a deterrent to your plans. This is not therapy. It's just for informational purposes only. Second thing that we need to address is that the questions that you sent in will be edited for clarity. Sometimes you can send a very long question. Once I understand the gist, once I understand the core of your question, the essence of your question, the question will be edited for clarity so that we can get through as many as possible as soon as possible. Third, but definitely not least, in the comment section, no hate speech, no insulting people, no personal attacks, no spamming. Please refrain, cease and desist from doing any of those things. Let's adhere to the community guidelines of Instagram and whichever platform you're watching this at. So let's adhere to those guidelines and let's be civil with each other. If you have something to respond to, it's okay for you to state it in the comments, but state it in a civil way, state it in a mature way. Do not attack people. You can argue a point, but don't attack people. So yeah, with that said, I will get straight into the questions that I got. I got many questions. Let me start by saying that. And so I will only be dealing with, I think, 2 or 3 questions today. And then next week we'll answer more questions. And the week after that, we'll probably answer more questions. And so today I'm going to be answering maybe 3 questions max, or 4 if time allows. I also don't want to take forever. So yeah, that's my plan. So let me get started with the very basic question that I keep getting, that was very common among several that were sent in. And the first one was, do counselors have their own counselors? Do counselors go to therapy? And somebody was very curious about that because they were saying that it must be exhausting for counselors to spend all their day, sometimes even the entire week, listening to other people's problems. So do they get to do their own therapy? Do they get to see their own counselors? And yes, I wanted to respond to that by saying that there are 2 ways in which counselors seek therapy, find therapy. So the first one, of course, is personal therapy. Counselors are human beings. Mental health professionals are human beings. We go through every problem that you can think of. So think about anything that has ever happened to you. It has probably happened to a therapist as well. So being a therapist does not make you immune to human problems. You will struggle just like everyone else. You will go through loss. You will go through getting fired. You will lose money. You will lose things. Your house can burn down. Every single problem that you can think of, a counselor can go through. So there's nothing that immunizes us from that. And so we seek our own therapy. We seek our own personal therapy. We go and see our therapist. And then in therapy, we deal with our problems with our therapist. With the help of our therapist, we get insight into things we are not seeing. Maybe we are not seeing some of the issues that we are dealing with because we are in the pain. We are wallowing in a lot of pain and self-pity and all these things. So those things happen to therapists worldwide. So yeah, we are not immune. We go to therapy. The other aspect of therapy is that mental health professionals ordinarily go for something called supervision. So supervision is not somebody coming to tell you, oh, you're doing this or not doing this, the way you'd think of a regular supervisor. That's not how supervision works. Supervision is where you go to a person, ideally somebody who is more experienced than you, or somebody who is an expert in the particular issue you're dealing with, especially when it comes to professional issues. So let's say, for example, I have a client who is going through something that I'm not very conversant with, or I'm finding difficulties helping this client because I don't feel competent enough, or I don't have enough skills for this particular thing, and I need, or even maybe my own issues are clouding my ability to see and help the client. If that is something that I'm going through, I would ordinarily go to a supervisor. And a supervisor will help me see what I am not seeing. A supervisor is like having a second pair of eyes on the particular problem you're going through. So if it's this client that I'm dealing with who has a problem that I can't handle on my own, I go to a supervisor. The supervisor helps me see things that I am missing so that I can create a better work plan for the client's particular issue. So that's where we go for supervision. There's something else called peer supervision, where mental health professionals go to their fellow mental health professionals, and we all help each other. We all try to handle a particular case that we're dealing with. If it's a difficult case and I want my fellow colleagues to give me more eyes on it, that is something that I would do in the sense of being in peer supervision. So yeah, that's how we do. Well, that's how mental health professionals find help. They go to their own therapists and they seek supervision from their supervisors, and they do peer supervision. So yeah, that's something. The other question that came through was about whether counselors get bored of hearing the same problem from people over and over again. So maybe I'm assuming this is something about you get one client who's going through depression and another client who's going through depression, and you're seeing 10 clients going through depression, on and on and on and on. So the way I would answer this is, first of all, from a therapist point of view, if you're a therapist and you're starting to get bored with your clients, or you're starting to get tired of hearing their problems, that could be a sign of something else. And that something else could be either burnout, it could be a sign of stress, it could be frustration, it could be that you're just not in the headspace to conduct therapy. So that's why you would find that as a therapist, you are getting tired of hearing their problems. Sometimes it's not because the client is the problem, it's because you are going through something, and most of the time that something is burnout. So most of the time as a therapist, if you find that you are getting bored when the client is there with you, you feel sleepy. Sometimes you hear that your client is coming to therapy and you're thinking, do I really want to see this client? Or when the client tells you they're cancelling the session, or they want to reschedule to another day, you're excited. You're like, oh my gosh, thank God they are cancelling this session. If you find yourself going through any of those issues as a therapist, then that could be a sign of burnout. That could be a sign that you yourself are going through something that you've not already dealt with, because your work essentially is to listen to people. So if you're getting tired of doing the work that you have vowed to do, then that could be a sign of something. So think about it in that sense. Answering it for people who are non-therapists. As a therapist, I don't get bored of hearing your story. As a therapist, I don't get tired of hearing your story. Of course, unless I am dealing with my own things. But in general, we don't get tired or bored of hearing your stories, even if we hear the same story from somebody else. Because we are not hearing the same story. We are hearing something that sounds similar across different people, but from their own points of view. So think about it this way. Human problems are universal. We all go through the same things. We all go through loss, grief, and all these things, whatever they are, addiction, abuse, all these things, we go through them universally. They are universal concepts. But at the end of the day, the way we experience them is individual. So even if me and you go through the same thing, let's say me and you go through the same loss, we lose somebody that we both knew, our experiences of that grief is going to be different because we had a different relationship with that person. Both of us had different relationship with that person. So that's why even if I hear a story of grief from one client and I hear a story of grief from another client, I won't say that I'm hearing the same story, because I'm not hearing the same story. I'm hearing the story from their perspective, and our individualities are different. We are different people. We have different experiences, and in those experiences we get to be who we are. So no, I don't get tired of hearing your problems as a counselor. I don't get bored of hearing about your problems. It's literally my job, and I want to help you figure out how to solve it. So I can't come in with that mentality of I'm tired or I'm bored. And if as a mental health professional I get to that point where I'm actually bored, I'm tired of hearing problems, that's a sign that I should take some time off. That's a sign that I should go for supervision again to my supervisor and find out if there's something that I am missing. That is a sign that I should take some time off to deal with my burnout. That could be a sign that I need to go for my own therapy to deal with my own personal problems. So yeah, that's how this thing works. So I hope that question is adequately answered. There was another one that came through about whether people, if there are people who are naturally counselors. And I found that to be a very interesting question because I don't know if there's anything like being naturally anything. Because I'm thinking, are there people who are naturally architects? Are there people who are naturally doctors? I don't think it's a thing, but we can say that people have interests in some things. So there are people who have interest in mental health, and so they become mental health professionals. There are people who have an interest in the helping professions in general. But even beyond that, I think there's also the aspect of personality. There are people whose temperament allows them to be the best people for particular things. So I think for you to be a mental health professional, you have to have some kind of way of being. There must be a personality thing in you that allows you to be the person that you are. It can be nature or it can be nurture. I don't exactly know which one would influence the most, but I know there must be something in you that draws you to the helping professions. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external, but either way, I don't think there's that thing where there are people who are naturally it, but there are some things that can draw you into becoming a person in the mental health professions. So I guess that's how I would answer that. I don't know if I'm missing something. Pauline, you're asking if it is okay to expect the therapist to tell you their detailed stories. So that's a very interesting question and comes up a lot in different circles, even between mental health professionals. So there's a school of thought that insists that you, as a therapist, you need to be a blank slate. And being a blank slate means that when you come to therapy, the client should not see you having these emotions or telling things about yourself, or they should see you basically as just a slab there. You're just there and there's no personality to you and you're just there. But then there's the school of thought that insists that as a counselor, you're also a human being. So your personality and your presence plays a role in the therapy process. And so I lean on the personality, on the latter. I believe that you can't really be a blank slate. I don't think there's a human being who's created to be a blank slate. And your authenticity as a human being is what helps you become even a better therapist to your clients. So you should, as a therapist, I would insist that you bring some personality to it. But when you go now to the detailed stories, that's a different story altogether. So remember, in therapy, you and your client are not friends. So as a therapist, when you come to therapy, and I'm a therapist, me and you are not friends. We have never been, we can never be friends. And it's not a bad thing. That's a good thing because it helps maintain I think the fidelity of the relationship. There are no strings attached to it, so we are not going to attach any strings. And so the therapist is not supposed to be telling you their detailed personal stories at all, because if they're telling you their detailed personal stories, then it becomes like you guys are friends. I would expect with friends for you to tell each other personal stories. But if your therapist is telling you their personal stories, it is either a sign that they are going through something that they have not dealt with in their own therapy. And so when you come to therapy, okay, then look the guy. Okay, yeah. So if your therapist is telling you their detailed personal stories, it is either a sign of they have not dealt with their problems in their own personal therapy. Remember, when you come to therapy, that is your time. You're paying to be there. For that 1 hour, your therapist is supposed to give you undivided attention. And if they spend that time telling you their personal problems, it means, first of all, they're cheating you out of your 1 hour. You are spending time and money on them to tell you their stories. So if you find that your therapist is telling you their detailed personal stories, that is something that you should bring up with them. Ask them to probably focus on you, because that is your time. But also, as a therapist, you need to go and figure out, why are you spending the client's time on yourself? That is not your time. So to maintain the professionalism, that time should be spent on the client. So yeah, your client should not, you as a therapist should not be telling you their personal stories, Pauline. They should be focusing on you, listening to your story. Yes, they can give you a bit of their story here and there if it serves the purpose of enhancing the relationship of it, or it will make your healing an easier journey. So there's some things that therapists will tell. It's called the self-disclosure. There's some things that your therapist will say about their own personal lives, but it will not be them spilling everything. They will be telling you things that help enhance the relationship or help the healing journey get easier for you. So I hope that question is adequately answered for you. There's something else that came up, and I'm just looking at my notes down here. The question was on whether therapy works all the time, and if it can make you worse, and the ways that it can make you worse. So let me address the first part, which is whether therapy works all the time. I don't think we can conclusively say that there's any therapy that works 100% of the time. And this is because even when it comes to, let's say, medication and other professions, like in the medical field, there's no one medical intervention that works 100% of the time on 100% of the people in the world. That does not yet exist. So that's the same case with therapy. There are many different types of therapies. There are many different types of therapists, and therapy cannot work for everybody 100% of the time because of many reasons that are still under investigation. There's a lot of research that is being done on this particular issue to confirm whether therapy is really as effective as we think it is. And so even as the research is ongoing, we need to keep in mind that therapy does not always work 100% for all people, for various things, including individual, the way we are created individually. We are different people, and not everything will work for us 100% of the time. But what I would want to focus on would be that success looks different for different people on different days. So when it comes to therapy, when we put the blanket statement of does therapy work, we might lose sight of the fact that success looks different for different people. So for example, if for you, when you go to therapy, success is being able to break some patterns that you have noticed in yourself, then and during that time, your time in therapy, you manage to break those patterns, then we can say that therapy has worked for you. For some people, therapy will be if they're feeling better about themselves and about their situation they're in. And so if after a few sessions they start feeling better, then yes, that's a sign of therapeutic success. Again, remember, therapy success can be looked at from different perspectives, in the sense that there's the way the therapist looks at therapy and they're like, oh yeah, we are doing well. And there's also the side of the client, where the client might look at therapy and be like, oh yeah, we are doing well. So being able to address specifically who is saying that therapy is working, is it the client or is it the therapist? And at what point do we determine that therapy has worked? Is it after 3 sessions? Is it after 6 sessions? Is it after 10 sessions? Is it after 5 years? How do you determine that? So there's a lot that goes into it, but I would urge you to, by the time you go to therapy, have a rough idea of what you will use as a determinant of success for you in therapy. So don't go to therapy expecting that when you show up, there's going to be this one standard measure that will be applied to say, yes, you've succeeded in therapy, congratulations, go in peace. I don't think that will happen. What should happen ideally is that you should come to therapy with an idea of what you want to get out of it, have an idea of what success will look like for you during your time in therapy, have an idea of how you will monitor progress. And of course, these things are discussed with your therapist. By the time you decide what you want to do, your therapist has to be on board with you as well. Like, you guys have to be working together. You can't be going in different directions. So determine what success looks like for you. Determine how you will know when you're doing well, and start working towards that from the very beginning, even with your therapist, and involve your therapist in your plans so that your therapist can help you get to where you're going. There's something that is quite important as well when it comes to determining whether therapy will work, and that is admitting that not everyone will benefit from therapy is a good thing, in the sense that it helps relieve the burden from the client and from the therapist, where people don't start now blaming themselves. Because if we sit here and say that therapy works 100% of the time, then if you go to therapy and therapy does not work for you, you're going to start blaming yourself. You're going to be like, if therapy works 100% of the time, why did it not work for me? What is wrong with me? Am I a bad person? Is my problem so big that therapy could not work for me, right? So admitting that it will not always work 100% for everybody relieves you from that pressure. And it also helps us to start thinking of ways of helping people beyond therapy. It creates room for having dialogue beyond one-on-one counseling and what we can do for people who therapy has not worked for. What else can we do for them? So that caring does not mean that it only happens within therapy. The end of therapy does not mean stopping caring. So I think that's an important aspect to think about. It also helps set realistic goals for both the therapist and the client, so that you know that in case this does not work, it does not mean that I am broken 100%, that there's something wrong with me, that I am a bad human, or I am failure, or whatever. It just means that that one thing did not work, and now we can experiment with other things. So yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. If you have any input, this is a good time to bring it up. And yeah, I think that is important. Can therapy make you worse? Yes, therapy can make you worse, especially if there's one thing that has been seen cutting across all sectors when it comes to mental health, and that is the relationship you have with your therapist. So your perception of the relationship you have with your therapist is the number one determinant of whether you will succeed in therapy or not, whether therapy will be fruitful and beneficial for you or not. So if you feel that relationship with your therapist is not good, there's a high chance that you will find therapy to be useless. And so therapy can make you worse if your relationship with your therapist is flawed. If you hate your therapist, if you find that you cannot be honest with your therapist, if you find that you have to hide parts of yourself to feel accepted by your therapist, if you feel that your therapist is not the right person for you, you guys don't click, if you feel like they're judging you, it doesn't matter whether they're judging you, by the way. If you're the one who is feeling that they're judging you, that could be a reason why therapy might not work for you. So your perception of therapy and how it works, and therapy, the relationship you have with your therapist, that is going to be a big determinant of whether you will benefit from therapy or not. So if it is not working, that could be something that could make your situation worse. If your therapist is not qualified to handle your issue, that could also make your situation worse, because if you go to therapy and your therapist is just trying out a bunch of things, they are guessing, they're doing guesswork with you, they're just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks with you, you can get frustrated and you can get tired because you feel like this is not working for me. And so yes, if your therapist is not qualified enough for your situation, that could make your situation worse. There's also something that I find interesting in the sense that if you feel like you are more intelligent than your therapist, and I don't know, if you feel like you have to, if you feel like your therapist is less intelligent than you, like you guys are not on the same mental wavelength or even higher, if you feel like you have to educate your therapist on things when it comes to you, and maybe even general knowledge things, it might be tricky. Your relationship might become shaky. And I don't know how you would address that, but that is something that you should consider. So it doesn't mean that your therapist is an all-knowing master who knows everything and they will give you 100% answers on every single thing. That is not what it means. It means that if you and your therapist cannot have an intelligent conversation and you're feeling that it is them who are less intelligent, that might make it hard for you to trust them and to trust their opinion on things. Yes, therapy is not a therapist telling you what to do, but if you guys do not have at least the same mental wavelength, that might be problematic. So consider getting somebody who you feel that you can have an intelligent conversation with. Yeah, all the best with that. I think that is important. There's another question from Pauline saying, someone told me they don't respect their therapist because they are from an older generation and speaks to them like more of a pastor than a therapist. Is age a determining factor? There's different ways to look at this, and I'll start with the last part, which is age a determining factor? So there are some people who believe that the age of the therapist is a determining factor in whether the therapy will be successful or not. Going back to what I just said before, that the number one determinant of whether therapy will be useful for you is the relationship you have with your therapist. So coming from that point of view, then it means that age will not be the biggest determinant. It can be a determinant, but it will not be the biggest determinant. The relationship is the number one determinant. Everything else trickles down from that. But of course, there are some people who feel that if you're young, you're too young, you don't have the knowledge or the experience to help them. If you're too old, you might be stuck in your ways and you might not help them the way they need to be helped. So that's a thing. But remember, the relationship is the number one determinant. So the part where you say that their therapists, they don't respect their therapist because they are from an older generation and speaks to them more of a pastor than a therapist. I think this is a case of therapist-client mismatch in the sense that you realize that the client feels that this person is speaking to them like a pastor. So that tells you the client was not looking for a therapist who is like that. Remember, like as I said in the beginning, there are many different types of therapy, and there's different ways that therapists address mental health issues in the therapy room. So if this person is feeling like this one is a pastor, they are preaching to them, it means that either, first of all, the therapist is placing their values on the client. The therapist is trying to convert the client to their own values and their own way of thinking. And so they are placing their values in front of the clients more prominently than addressing the client's problems. So that could be a reason why the client feels like this person is being too pastoral on them. Or it could be that the person is just a pastor and honestly their personal life influences their work too much to the extent that they forget to demarcate where therapy starts and where pastoralism is done for animals. So yeah, they're finding it hard to demarcate where being a pastor starts and where being a therapist starts. So the lines are blurred. So I think maybe this is something that the therapist might want to think about. Your friend can go and talk to their therapist and mention what they are not getting out of therapy. Remember that your therapist will not get angry at you for telling them what is not working for you. Actually, as a therapist, I will highly, highly encourage you to talk to your therapist when something is not working. If you come to me and you feel that I am being a pastor to you, I need you to tell me so that I can change the tactic. I can change and do something different that works for you. If you don't tell me, I will continue doing the things that I am doing because I'm thinking they are working. So, yes, pastoralism, adding the clients to the church. Kyalo, stop it. So yeah, if as a client you don't tell your therapist the things that are working and the things that are not working, your therapist is going to continue doing those things thinking that they're working for you. But if they're not working, then you're the one who's going to lose. So do you understand why you need to be honest with your therapist from the very beginning? If at any point you feel that there's something wrong going on in therapy, if it's not working, if there's a tactic that the therapist has tried with you and you feel that it landed badly, if they did something that offended you, you need to be proactive enough and tell your therapist. I know sometimes it's hard, especially when you're going through something that is very difficult. You feel that it should not be on you to tell your therapist. You're thinking that the therapist should be self-aware enough to know the things they are doing. But remember, as I keep saying, Your therapist is not an expert on your life. You are the expert of your life. Even when you come to therapy, the therapist will remind you, you are the expert of your life. So even if I keep doing things as a therapist, it doesn't mean that you are going to benefit from them just because I'm the one who has gone to school. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you and your therapist need to be collaborators. In therapy, there's no mjuaji na there's no one person who knows a lot and another person who knows less. There's just two people who are trying to help this one person get to the places they want to go. So if something is wrong, speak up. Be the one to tell your therapist, X, Y, and Z is not working. I feel like you're not understanding me. I feel like you are preaching to me. I feel like you are not seeing my issues from my point of view, and the need for us to change this so that therapy can go better. It is okay for you to tell your therapist. I think I have belabored that point too much, and I hope Pauline you answered. And yes, I think that is a fantastic thing to go and tell your friend so that they know where they are. I have other questions, but I don't think I will be answering them. Yes. The last question that I wanted to address was the part of what to do when there's no progress with therapy. So somebody asked in therapy, what do I do if I feel like I am stuck in the same place and therapy is not moving forward? I've been seeing this therapist for the last X number of sessions or X number of years, and it feels like we are mark timing. So I wanted to address that because I think it's a very important thing that happens in therapy. Again, the first thing is always to talk to your therapist. Don't feel like you have to keep quiet because your therapist seems all-knowing. As a therapist, we are not all-knowing. We know a few things, and you're the expert of your life, so you have to tell us what is working and what is not working. So talk to your therapist. If you're in therapy and you're feeling that there's no progress, talk to your therapist. Tell them that you're feeling there's no progress, and then you guys address that issue together. Review your goals for therapy. So remember, as I said at the beginning, when you go to therapy, have a rough idea of what you want to achieve, what you want to get out of therapy. So if you get to a point where you feel like you're stuck, this is a good time to review those goals. Go back and think about what did you want to get when you started therapy. If it was 6 sessions ago, why were you coming to therapy 6 sessions ago? And have you achieved those things? If you have not achieved them, is there something stopping you from achieving those things? And bring them to therapy and discuss them with your therapist. Find out where they can help you so that you can stop feeling stuck. And yeah, it is totally okay to always review. And I think reviewing is a good measure is a good thing to do so that you can measure progress. You can know if you're headed in the right direction. To also find out if you're still on course. Because it's very possible to go to therapy and then get caught up in other things that are going on in your life, that you forget the thing that brought you to therapy. And then after 12 weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been in therapy for 12 weeks and I have not dealt with the issue that brought me to therapy. And then you're thinking that was wasted time. That should not be a thing. So consider reviewing your therapy goals and bringing them to therapy so that you and your therapy can get unstuck. You and your therapist can get unstuck. The other thing that you need to do is review and define your idea of success. As I said in the beginning, know what success looks like from the very beginning. And even if you don't have a concrete idea, have a rough idea. Even if you don't know what success will look like, have an idea of what failure will look like, so that you can know which direction not to go to. So sometimes when you're coming to therapy, you might not know everything you want out of therapy, but you should know at least some things that you want to better in your life. So that is a good measure. And yeah, I think that is an important thing to consider. Last but definitely not least, you can take a break if you're in therapy. You can take a break if therapy is not working, and it is okay to have this conversation with your therapist and consider speaking to them so that they can change course of action if things are not working for you, and you guys can take some time off. You can go and see if your life is going the way you thought it would be going after therapy. And if something comes up and you still want to go back to therapy, the doors are always open. You're welcome to come and speak to your therapist again. So yes, with those few questions answered, I want to end this live. I hope you've gotten something out of this, and we will be doing these lives every Tuesday. I have very many other questions that I've not answered today because I could not answer them all today. And yeah, next week I'll be back with something else and we'll talk about it. If you have any questions, you can always send them in the DMs. You can always send them in the comment section of these videos, and I will get to them when I do. And yes, I hope you are benefiting from these things. Thank you for coming through. Share this video with someone who might benefit from it, and let's demystify mental health. If you are a professional mental health practitioner out there, come through. Let's answer some of these questions together, and let's help the populace so that you can make mental health a conversation that is already in the public domain, so that we stop the stigma and end these stories. So I think that's important. Awesome. Thank you everyone for coming through. I appreciate your time, and I hope you've benefited. I will see you next week, same day, same time, 8 p.m. and we'll be talking about more stuff. So stick around, share this, like something, and follow us so that you can get more information on mental health. See you and have a good one. Good night.